Welcome to Protege, where we break down the invisible skills that actually accelerate your career. I'm Molly Jaggers, and have you ever wondered what it takes to have someone put your name forward and have the whole room nod? That's the magic moment everyone hopes for. But here's the thing, it's not magic, it's strategy. And that's what today is about. If you're looking to land that first promotion into leadership this year, here's what you need to know. Those decisions are being made right now, this quarter. By the time April rolls around, the lists are already set. These next 3 months, that's your window. That's when conversations happen, lists get made, and when decision makers start forming opinions about who's ready for the next level. And here's what most women get wrong. They think Q1 is just about setting goals. New year, new goals, time to map out what I want to accomplish. And that's fine. But if you're specifically focused on getting promoted this year, Q1 is about something different. It's the quarter to strategically build your foundation. It's that window where you position yourself as the obvious choice. Or you don't. So let's make sure you do. Today, I'm giving you the exact 90-day playbook, month by month, who to talk to, what to say, what to pursue, and how to convert all of that into active advocacy. First, let's talk about why timing matters so much. And I want to pull the curtain back a bit here because if you haven't been in manager level planning conversations, you might not know how this actually works. Most people start thinking about promotions when the cycle opens. HR sends out the forms, your manager asks for your self-assessment, probably collecting feedback for 360 reviews, and suddenly you're scrambling to document your wins and hope someone notices. That is too late. Here's what research shows. Columbia Business School found that 4 out of 5 managers mentally pre-select their promotion candidates 3 to 6 months before the formal process even begins. Let that sink in. By the time you're filling out your self-assessment, your manager has probably already decided whether or not you're on the list. And it's not just your manager. Promotions require organizational alignment, budget approvals, headcount planning, role restructuring, succession conversations. All of that coordination happens months in advance. At companies like E&Y, for example, promotion roundtables for October happen around late May to early June, which means that positioning work, that needed to happen back in Q1. But here's what makes this quarter different from any other. Right now, executives are planning the year. They're thinking about their biggest challenges, their strategic priorities, and the gaps on their team. And they're asking themselves one question: who do I have who can step up? That's the question you want your name attached to. Think about it from their perspective. They're sitting in a room with their peers and executive teams mapping out the year, and someone says, "We need someone to lead that cross-functional initiative." And in that moment, your name either comes up or it doesn't. If no one's mentioning you when those questions get asked, you're invisible. And invisible people don't get promoted. Quick caveat here, not every company does mid-year promotions. Some are annual only, so December or January. If that's your situation, adjust this timeline accordingly. But the principle is exactly the same. Decisions happen 3 to 6 months before they're announced. So know your company's cycle, then work backwards. Something else that can help you figure this out, according to LinkedIn data, January, June, and July are the most common months for promotions. So if your company does do mid-year promotions, and most larger ones do, then Q1 is your window. Let me give you something that changed how I think about this. I started treating visibility like an actual equation, not a vague concept, but a formula with variables you can control. And so here it is. Visibility equals value times reach times frequency plus sponsor advocacy. Let me break that down. Value is the baseline. You have to be doing good work. But here's the reality. Good work alone doesn't create visibility. I've seen plenty of women doing excellent work who never got promoted because no one knew about it. We're really good at putting our heads down and delivering. We're less good at making sure the right people know we delivered. And that gap, that's where promotions get lost. Reach is about who knows your work. If only your direct manager knows, your reach is limited. If your skip level knows, if cross functional leaders know, if executives know, that expands your reach. And then frequency is how often those people hear about your contributions. Once a quarter in a performance review is not enough. You need consistent touch points. And then there's sponsor advocacy. This is the multiplier. When someone with influence actively champions you in rooms you're not in, that's when everything changes. Because you can do all the work on value, reach, and frequency, but if no one's willing to stake their reputation on you, you're still just a name on a list. This is the multiplier effect that turns you from just another name into the obvious choice. Most women only focus on value. They think if they just work hard enough, someone will notice. But this equation has four variables for a reason, and this quarter is your window to work on all of them. All right, so let's get into this playbook. Month one, January. This is all about clarity and identification. Before you do anything else, you need to answer one question. What are you actually positioning for? Now, this may sound obvious, but most people skip it. They have a vague sense of, oh, I want to grow, or I want more responsibility. That's not specific enough. And think about it this way, if you're not clear on what you want, how can you expect anyone else to advocate for it? So think about this one. Are you positioning for a promotion to manager? Are you looking for a lateral move to a higher visibility team? Maybe you're gunning for a stretch assignment that builds your leadership narrative. Each of these requires different positioning, different sponsors, and different experiences. So get specific, write it down. Something like, I want to move from senior financial analyst to finance manager by mid year. Or if you're not exactly sure about your title yet, maybe it looks like, I want to move into my first people leadership role by Q3. Or maybe it's not a title at all. Maybe it's, I want to lead the Q2 product launch because that'll give me the cross functional leadership experience I need to make my case. And once you're clear on the outcome, work backwards. What milestones would prove that you're ready? What experiences would give you the credibility to make the ask? Who influences that specific decision? That's your January roadmap. Now, let's talk about who matters. We covered sponsor criteria in depth back in episode 2, influence, evidence, and foundation. Quick refresh here. A sponsor is someone senior enough to have a voice in your advancement, who has seen you deliver, and who you've built real rapport with. If you haven't done the sponsorship audit from that episode, go back and do it. For today, though, I'm assuming you already know what makes someone a strong potential sponsor. The question now is, who are those people for you specifically based on what you're looking to achieve? So start with an audit. 3 questions here. First, who actually decides promotions at your company? Not who you think decides. Get really clear here about who actually sits in the room when names get discussed. For most people, that's your skip level manager, maybe their peers, sometimes HR business partners. Whatever the case is, find out how decisions actually get made. Second, who has influence with those decision makers? This is your potential sponsor pool. People who could advocate for you and have credibility with the people who decide. And by the way, this is where cross-functional relationships really shine. That director from the other team that you partnered with on last quarter's launch, they might have more influence on your promotion than you think. Remember, promotions require organizational alignment. So the more people across the org who can speak to your work, the stronger your case. And third, who currently knows about your work? Of the people who matter when making these decisions, how many could actually speak to what you've accomplished in the last 6 months? Think about this one a bit. Who's attended meetings you've run? Who's seen you present? Who's watched you navigate a tough conversation or lead a project through a rough patch? And what did they actually see? How were you showing up in those moments? So the gap between who matters and who knows my work, that's your January priority. So you got your list, 3 to 5 people who influence the promotion decision but don't exactly know your work. Now what? Well, you reach out. And I know this feels awkward for some people. You don't want to seem political. You don't want to look like you're sucking up. And I get that, but here's how to reframe that in your mind. You're not asking for anything. You're gathering intelligence. You're trying to understand what success looks like this year so you can deliver more value. The script here is simple. Hi, Sarah. I'm thinking about how to make the biggest impact this year. Could we grab 15 minutes? I'd love to get your perspective on what matters most. That's it. You're not asking for a promotion. You're not selling yourself. You're asking for their input. And people love giving input. Now, in those conversations, listen more than you talk. Ask what they're focused on this year. Ask what problems are keeping them up at night. Ask what great looks like in your function. And pay attention because what they tell you is a roadmap. Those pain points they mentioned, those are opportunities for you to create visible value in month 2. And those are the experiences that'll build your leadership narrative. All right, so now you've got intelligence, you know who matters, you know what they care about. Month 2 is all about execution, but strategic execution. This is where a lot of women make a mistake. They volunteer for everything, spread themselves thin, and end up doing a bunch of work that no one important ever sees. Don't do that. This is where protecting your time becomes critical, not just important, but a strategic imperative. If you don't already know how to set boundaries, this is the quarter to learn. Taking on more than you can deliver well doesn't help anyone. Not you, not your team, not your manager, not the company. Overcommitting leads to mediocre work that doesn't get you promoted. So when someone asks you to take on something that doesn't align with your priorities, practice saying something like this. Hey, I'd love to, but I'm at capacity with Project X right now. Can we revisit this next month? Or, oh, that sounds important. Can you help me understand where it falls relative to my other priorities on my plate? What should I deprioritize to make room for this? You're not saying no here. You're forcing a prioritization conversation. And here's the thing, that's exactly what leaders do. Leaders don't say yes to everything, they make trade offs. They protect their team's capacity so that they can focus on what matters most. And when you start managing your workload like a leader, people start seeing you as one. And while we're talking about what to say no to, watch out for that office housework. You know what I mean? Taking notes in meetings, organizing the team's offsite, planning for birthday celebrations, ordering lunch for the client visit. This stuff disproportionately falls on women, and it is a visibility killer. It keeps you busy on low impact work. None of it connects to the company's bottom line. None of it gets discussed in promotion conversations. So do not let yourself become the default for this kind of work. So instead of overcommitting, be intentional. Look at what you learned in January. What problems are executives actually talking about? What initiatives have leadership attention? What's the work that, if you did it well, would get mentioned in rooms that you're not in? That's the work you want, not the busy work, not the nice to have projects, the work that directly connects to what decision makers care about. And here's the key, you don't just do the work, you make sure the people who matter know you're doing it. And I'm not talking about bragging here, I'm talking about connecting dots they can't see. Think about it. These senior leaders aren't in your day to day. They don't see you solving problems, leading meetings, driving results. So if you don't tell them, they literally don't know. You're not self promoting here, you're closing an information gap. So here's how to do this without being annoying. Every week or two, send a quick note to the people you identified in January. Not a novel, a few sentences. And here's the key to what makes this work. You tie your update to their priorities, not just your accomplishments. So this can look something like, hey, Marcus, I know customer retention is a focus for the exec team this quarter. Wanted to share the onboarding redesign I've been leading just hit a 15% improvement in 30-day activation. Still refining the second touch point. I'd love your take on whether we should prioritize speed or personalization there. Notice what happened? You connected to something they care about. You shared a concrete win, and you asked for their input, which creates investment. Two things are happening here. First, you're staying on their radar. That's frequency. Second, you're inviting them into your success. When someone gives you advice and you act on it, they become a stakeholder. They want to see you win because they contributed. That's how you turn contacts into champions. All right, now we're in March, and this is where it gets real. Here's a distinction most women miss at this point. There's a difference between someone who thinks well of you and someone who's actually willing to go to bat for you. You've done the work the past 2 months. You've identified the right people, you've built the relationships, and you've stayed on their radar. But passive supporters don't automatically become active sponsors. You have to ask. Now, I know for many women, this can feel like the uncomfortable part. And if you've never done this before, it's going to feel awkward. That's normal. You're building a new muscle. Most people never make this ask because it feels presumptuous. They think, well, if they wanted to advocate for me, they would. But that's not how it works because potential sponsors are busy. They have their own priorities, their own challenges, their own political dynamics to navigate. So while they might think highly of you, unless you explicitly ask them to advocate, they probably won't. Not because they don't want to, because it's not on their radar. So you put it on their radar. And here's how to make that ask feel more natural. First, give them your highlight reel 3 to 5 specific wins from the past 6 to 12 months. Not a laundry list of everything you did, your most impactful work, the stuff that demonstrates you're ready for the next level. Then help guide them on who to talk to. Don't make them guess. Let me show you what this actually looks like. Imagine you've been working with your VP of marketing for the past couple of months. You've kept her updated on your wins, you've asked for input on key decisions, and you've demonstrated your strategic thinking. Now it's time for the ask. So you set up a one on one with her and you say something like this: I've been thinking about my growth this year. Based on the work I've done on the product launch, the 15% activation improvement, and the cross functional collaboration with sales, I believe I'm ready for a senior manager role. Now, I know you'll be in these conversations about the team structure. Would you feel comfortable recommending me in those discussions? Notice what happened? You gave her the highlight reel. You connected it to concrete results. You told her exactly who to talk to, and you made a specific ask. Now, most women never ask this directly. They hint, they hope, they drop comments about wanting to grow, but they never actually say, will you advocate for me? And as a side note here, if you've done the work in January and February, this isn't coming out of nowhere. You've built the relationship, you've asked for their input, you've kept them updated on your progress, you've laid the groundwork. So the ask is the natural conclusion. So, right about now, you might be thinking, well, this all sounds great, Molly, but what if they say no? And that's fair. I hear you. But you got to understand this: no is rarely a forever no. It's usually a not right now. And that's actually useful information. So when someone says no, ask yourself one question: is this about me or is this about them? If it's about you, there's something missing in their picture of you. They haven't seen enough evidence, so they're not confident that you're ready. That's a signal, not rejection. So ask them, what would you need to see from me? And based on what they say, now you've got a roadmap that you can again take action on and iterate. If it's about them, something's happened in their world that you haven't considered. Maybe things have changed and they're not in the right conversations. Maybe they're navigating their own political dynamics. You just don't know. So ask them questions like, is there anything I should know about how these decisions get made? And then, who else should I be building relationships with to strengthen my case? Now you've got intel and a new path forward. Either way, you've put yourself on their side of the table. The best response to a no is curiosity, not disappointment. Hey, thanks for being honest. Can I ask, what would change your mind here? It keeps the door open and it gives you actionable intel that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. A no from one person doesn't close the door. It just tells you to find another door or go figure out what would get this one to open later. All right, before we close the playbook, let me tell you what not to do, because I've seen all of these things derail people who were otherwise doing great work. To start off with, don't wait until March to start. If you're hearing this in February or March, then yeah, start now. But know that you're a little behind. The earlier you begin, the more time you have to build genuine relationships instead of feeling rushed. And don't assume your work speaks for itself. I'm here to tell you right now, it doesn't. You can be doing great work and still be invisible to people who matter. Good work is necessary, but not sufficient. You have to connect the dots for people. You have to make your impact explicit. Here's a big one: don't rely only on your direct manager. Your manager might advocate for you, but there's still only one voice. In calibration meetings, you want multiple people saying your name and speaking to the value you provide. That's how you make your presence felt and your impact undeniable, even when you're not in the room. And that's what makes you that obvious choice. And finally, don't assume your sponsor knows what you want. You might think it's obvious that you want a promotion because you're thinking about it all the time. But I'm going to be the first one to break it to you. It's not. They're busy. They're not tracking your career goals. If you haven't explicitly told them, assume that they don't know. All right, so with all that in mind, here's what you can do this week to start shaping up your plan. 3 things. 1, get clear on your outcome. What specifically are you positioning for? Write it down. A promotion to what role? A move to what team? A stretch assignment that builds what skill and adds to your experience capital? Get specific. 2, list 5 people beyond just your manager who influence that decision. Look up and across. Who's above you and who's adjacent, who has a voice in those conversations? 3, for each of those 5 people, ask yourself, do they know my work and could they speak specifically to what I've accomplished? Be honest with yourself here. For anyone who doesn't know your work well enough, schedule a 15-minute conversation. Use that script I gave you earlier. Thinking about how to make the biggest impact this year. Can we grab 15 minutes? That's it. Clarify, identify, reach out. And here's what I want you to remember. The people who get promoted aren't waiting for their work to speak for itself. They're making sure it gets heard. They're the ones whose contributions are visible to decision makers at the right time and have sponsors actively championing them as well. This quarter is your window. Conversations that determine mid-year promotions are happening now. You can either set yourself up for success and to be spoken of highly in those conversations, or you can wonder why someone else got the role you wanted. If you're still feeling weird about the idea of building visibility and cultivating sponsorship, subscribe to this podcast. We're going to keep diving deep into all of this, not just tactics, but how to actually get comfortable using it. Because this is how we shape the next phase of our careers. Until then, do the work. Define your outcome, identify your 5, schedule your conversations, and start building visibility where it actually counts. I'm Molly Jaggers, and this is Protege. See you next week.